you right when you don't need money, honey. That would certainly make a hit.
Welcome to Word Docs. I'm Amy Matthews and I'm here today with Alex Vickery-Howe and Sean Williams. And today we're going to talk about killing characters. So we've done heroes and villains. We've done all kinds of topics. Today we're going to talk about killing our heroes, our villains, and everyone they know.
And lots and lots of extras.
In fiction.
Just
to be clear.
Yeah. Maybe. So how many fictional people have you killed?
Well, surely Sean would have the highest body count, right?
I was just about to say, I must have the highest body count.
You must.
Surely.
Oh, no, because I wrote a book about the Holocaust. I win.
No, but you see, I've got a collection about 12 of my post-apocalyptic stories, and I had to write the introduction for it on the
you killed the
weekend.
whole world. You win.
Well, I've killed the world multiple times. I've destroyed the entire solar system 3 times. So I think my body count is pretty
high.
See, people
Sean Williams,
tease me.
Slayer of Worlds.
Slayer of Worlds. People tease me because I made that Flinders video where I said being a writer is like being God. But then Sean says he destroys the solar system, and there it is.
Yeah, total God. Yeah, absolutely. My head is so huge at the thought of my deific prowess.
I think I'm just a demigod then. I don't think I've reached godhead.
But, quality, not quantity. That's what I always say. Whenever somebody says, you've written lots of books, you must be very clever, I say, no, quality over quantity every time.
That's only because if you said yes, you'd sound like a dick.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's true.
Was it Harper Lee that said she only, until the end of her career, she'd only written To Kill a Mockingbird, and people would say, why don't you write another book? And she'd go, I wrote To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah.
Yes, where do you go from there?
Where do you go from there? All the way. So you're destroying, I must have the smallest body count. You've
just written a play about a killer virus.
Oh, true. Sorry, yeah, that is true. Yeah. No, so I've committed mass genocide as well.
Okay, what's the most interesting murder? So we've all committed genocide as well as murder.
Mm. And at that point, it becomes a bit like Stalin, doesn't it? That a million deaths is a statistic, one death is a tragedy. So to paraphrase Stalin, probably.
But I guess that's what fiction writers do, right? Is you try and throw a light on the one death to illuminate the tragedy.
Well, J.K. Rowling said, do you say Rowling or Rowling? I think I
prefer
Rowling.
Rowling. That's how I
rolling.
Rolling. No, I don't know.
Do you roll your R's as you do it?
No, I was pronouncing the W as a W.
My mum has a really good joke about rolling your R's. She said the reason Edith Piaf became a prostitute was because she was really good at rolling her R's.
So we've gone somewhere already. So we'll call JK what? Joe. We'll call her Joe.
Joanne.
So she actually cries, she has said in the past, when she has to kill, presumably Dumbledore, probably. She actually wept over it.
What about the Weasleys? Oh, my goodness.
Spoiler.
One twin without the other. That was pretty hard.
No, you've got to spare. It's fine.
One of them was only the same.
One of them was only for parts anyway. It's fine. But
no tears shed for Snape, obviously. Poor old Snape.
Snape. That's tragic too. But have you ever killed someone and really felt, not the impact of a real person dying, but certainly felt moved or troubled by it?
I can't tell you this story because it will spoil the plot, so I won't tell you which book it is. But I have a book where someone dies and then, of course, they're not dead at the end because readers would never have forgiven me if I'd killed this character. And it's funny because as people are reading the book, I get messages of like, I can't believe you did that. I want to throw the book across the room. And then you kind of say, hang in there. And then they forgive you. But
That's like a scene from Misery, isn't it? Like, you killed my favourite character.
But I knew it would be, particularly because it's a romantic comedy, I knew it would be inexcusable to kill a character. It's not a main character, but it's someone that people like. And I knew that people would never forgive me for that. It's like animals, there's that save the cat thing that
absolutely.
If you kill an animal, people are never going to forgive you.
Yeah,
a friend of mine. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, unless you want that character to be so dark,
irredeemable. Even so, I don't know that the readers want to watch animals suffer.
Well, the actor that played Jason Voorhees in the Friday the 13th movies, in one of them, Jason was going to kick a dog. Now, if you've ever watched a Friday the 13th movie, the body counts are into the teens. Like you get to 14, 15 dead people. But the actor flat out said Jason would never kick a dog. And I think that's so interesting, isn't it? That he'll machete people to death, but that was the line for that. I know it's really interesting.
A writer named Anne Gracie who lives in Melbourne who writes. She's written a lot of books. She writes historical kind of Regency romances, and she said the most letters she gets is over a book. I think it's The Perfect Rake, where the villain kicks a puppy at the beginning in the first chapter, and she just gets letters. He's not even the good guy; he's the bad guy, but because he kicked a puppy, she gets hate mail.
A study came out last week showing that people have more empathy for dogs than they do for other people. So it's not surprising. It's weird, but it's not so surprising that this should be the case. It's so strange.
My friend Caleb Lewis, that we may have on this podcast, nearly, I hope I'm not talking out of school, but I think nearly everything...
Oh, I hope you are.
I generally am. I think nearly everything he's ever written has involved the death of an animal. And Caleb's lovely. Caleb's lovely, warm, friendly guy. But the pinnacle of that was a play he wrote called Dogfall, where dogs just started falling from the sky.
Like splatting.
Well, like the frogs at the end of Magnolia, yeah.
Oh, that's so strange. Stepping back towards people, a friend of mine likes to tell the story about a book he was writing, and he has a scene where a child is killed in it, and he rang up the local police department in LA and said, now I'm writing this book, and there's this scene where a child is killed, and the policeman said, what? A child's been killed, and my friend said, no, it's a book. I'm just doing research from it. But you're killing a child. And my author friend spent like half an hour trying to explain that it was entirely fictional before giving up and realizing that it just would not be acceptable to kill that child, even fictionally in the book. And
even in the fictional
the child
world.
lived. Yeah, that's right. It was just too traumatic. And it can be traumatic, can't it? I mean, you can become so close to characters, and you spend a lot of energy and resources becoming friends with them or family with them even, and it can be really hard to let them go.
So what about tone then in writing those kinds of killing off characters? Because there's a big difference between doing it as a comedy and then trying to elicit grief or get grief on the page. So maybe Alex will start a comedy. Like, how do you
I'm
navigate
killing people
it?
all the time. Like, I'm working on a book called Stupid Dead Boy. And that's a kind of different thing. But then if you want to elicit a strong emotional response, I find the hardest scenes to write are not so much death scenes, but breakup scenes, actually. I think I've for some reason have written a lot of those. And I find them deeply affecting. But I did kill, in an unpublished novel, a mythological creature in a particularly dark, almost like the horse from Neverending Story kind of way.
Oh, but they brought it back at the end, the horse.
Well, they did bring everyone forgets they brought the horse back, but they did. And I've never, this is an unpublished novel, and it may remain that way, but I think that was one that bothered me. And it stayed with me, and I kind of went, I think it should stay. I think it's the right decision, but there's something about doing that I couldn't quite shake off. So maybe it goes back to what Sean said. Maybe we empathise a little more with animals. I certainly do, as a person, and that was a lot harder than writing some of these kind of outrageous dark comedies where people are, all sorts of horrific things are happening.
I quite like, in thrillers, I quite like subverting expectations, which is not always what you expect from a thriller, and it always gets me in trouble. So my book Twin Maker, or Twin Maker Jump, as it was called in Australia, is set up like a romantic love triangle set in a futuristic world. And I've had people's critics, on Goodreads and elsewhere say, oh, I'm not going to read this book, I know exactly where it's going. And I've had other readers say, no, keep reading, it all changes, because on page 77, the male of the triangle has his head blown off. suddenly out of nowhere, and it becomes a very different story at that point. There's a love quadrilateral in book 3 when he is brought back, but at that point it's clear it's not a love triangle anymore. But I found that scene very upsetting to write, not because he was a fully fleshed out character necessarily at that point in the draft, but because I knew how it would affect my main character. And I wonder if that's why breakups are sometimes so hard to write, because it's much more easy to empathise with somebody going through a breakup than it is somebody watching the guy they've got a crush on have his head blown off. I've never been in that situation, so I don't know exactly how it feels when I'm being dumped by somebody or having to dump somebody. And
most of us have been in probably both of those positions, so that really strikes us. That really gets us. You've just reminded me weirdly of when I was in high school. A friend of mine saying, "Alex, we're in a love rhombus." What's a rhombus? That's a four-sided shape, is that right? And I've never to this day even worked out what that was referring to.
There's your novel title right there, The Love Rhombus.
It sounds like a song or a band.
Yeah, like a
does
rumba.
Sound like a band, yes.
There's our fictional band. Yeah, it's
Amy, what about you?
Well, grief's interesting. So I've got a book where a child dies, like he's under 5, like a little kid, and having to write the mother's grief. And that was pretty intense to write. But all the things that set you off are fear, right? Thinking about fear. But then it's all the descriptions of, like, all of us have when we lose someone, that the imagining them being alone, right? So we all have that thing when someone dies of imagining what it must be like for them, even though you know they're dead, being in the casket under the ground alone or cold, or you have all those kinds of, and it's those, if you can tap into your own moments of grief, and that's what you're saying about breakups, is you know what you felt. So if you're the one being dumped, that intense rejection and loss and shame and just desire to have it not be true. And then if you're the one doing the dumping, this kind of extreme guilt,
I think.
Yeah, guilt and shame, and
you just want it to be over so you can both move on.
And pity, which is awful. Like, no one wants to be pitied, but I think you do feel pity. Yeah, so I think that's where we're getting back to writing being a bit like acting again, right? But then this is all tone, because you wouldn't do any of that in a comedy. If you or you try and do that scene in a different. I mean, one of the best breakup scenes I ever saw, and I can't remember what the play was called, was where the girl's trying to break up with the guy, and he's so understanding to an absurd extent. She's like, "I just need to be with someone else." "Oh, well, if you would like to shop around, then by all means, that's fine." I need someone with a bigger penis." "Well, if you require more girth, that's understandable as well." And it's just like, he's so reasonable. And
it's
so
like that breakup
great,
sequence in Parks and Rec. I don't know whether you're Parks and Rec watchers, where two characters break up, and the woman doesn't realise that she's been dumped because the guy's so polite and so nice about it. It's wonderful. Oh, there's no right way. Just like there's no right way to kill a character, really. Probably just do the best you can.
So the next question then becomes, why do we do it? What is the effect you're hoping to have? Or obviously that's a story by story thing, but what are the reasons we're doing that?
Well, partly for drama, isn't it? I mean, there are very few things more dramatic and readily available in fiction as killing someone, and it's possibly a bit lazy.
I mean, if you think
can
about,
be lazy, yeah.
Sorry to be lazy theoretically and rely on a text, but you think about the hero's journey, which a lot of people have rejected and don't love, but that idea that maybe a text is a cultural lesson, that we use text to kind of educate us on how to grow up or separate from parents or then become the adult or suffer breakups, suffer grief, that they're a way for us to practice emotion and maturity and all of those things, that we're going to have to practice grief and getting through it and hopefully not killing people.
In real life, well, there's that wonderful Simpsons episode where Homer's reading the kind of Harry Potter-esque novel to Lisa, I think, and he keeps cutting out the scene where Greystash, the wizard, I think it's Greystash, dies. Like he just keeps cutting that, and eventually she reads it. But there's that wonderful line. I don't know if it's Homer or Marge who says it. Who says, "No, you can't read about death in fiction. You must confront it suddenly and painfully in your real life, as we all do." And I thought it's such a wonderful moment. And then Lisa finally reads the story and reads about Greystash dying, and she goes, "Oh, I like Dad's version better," and that's kind of the end. But,
it's like the Princess Bride.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but I think it is partly about not shying away from things that happen in the real world, so that you do confront them in fiction rather than, as Homer or Marge said, confronting them in your real life. So I think
because
that can
even
be a
in
valid
Disney
way.
movies, people die. Like Bambi's mother dies.
Oh, I've never got
Simba's
past that point in the
father.
film.
But also, like, even in Dumbo, when he gets taken away from his mother.
I will not watch Dumbo. I didn't watch the remake. I will not go to Dumbo.
My son, hopefully he won't mind because he's, 6 foot tall now and he's glaring at me across the room as I tell the story. But when he was a kid, he was so affected, but he was so empathic. Like he couldn't, I'm talking like when he's 2 or 3, and he would cry at ads, or he would just find it all. He was so empathic, and we could not show him any Disney movies. Like we'd get to the point where it was like, there's nothing. Everyone's dead. Like every parent, everyone lost their parents. Tarzan lost his parents. Simba loses his parents. If you think about Cinderella, Snow White, like we were going through the Disney film, we'd get 5 minutes in and he'd like melt, and I'd be like, there's no story.
The Hunchback of Notre Dame movie where he gets kind of whipped and beaten, that's a shocker. Or the shoe in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which is still difficult for me to watch.
Dipped.
I don't know why they did that. I don't know what they were thinking. That is, in fact, the animator had to do something recently where he drew an image of the shoe in heaven because so many young people were traumatized by the shoe. Including me.
I am a sucker though. Like I think I can write emotion okay because I'm just like my son. I can't watch anything without crying. Titanic, I dissolve. Like it's Titanic. Everyone knows what's going to happen. I'm sobbing afterwards. Lord of the Rings, those 5 endings with all the sad moments. I'm done.
Oh really?
I'm out of there.
Oh, look, my movie that I can't watch without crying is AI of all movies.
Oh my God, I've never watched it again. No, that's so hard. And what you can see is Stanley Kubrick and Steven Spielberg battling. You've got Kubrick's darkness and Spielberg trying to make it happy, and he can't.
A friend of mine who's a film critic described it as ice-cold icebergs of Kubrick floating in a warm, smushy broth of Spielberg. And
but it makes it so much
true.
worse because, like, he's trying to, like, you're so invested in Haley Joel Osment, and then it's just hell. It's horrible.
Oh, it's emotional torture. And I did say to somebody once, I can't watch this film. And they said, oh, rubbish, bullshit. You've seen it once, it'll be fine.
I can't watch it again.
I was weeping 10 minutes into the film.
I'm with you because Johnny's never seen it. And I'm like, I'm not sure I've got the capacity. I don't know that I can watch that with you.
The other reason... sorry, Sean, go on.
No, please, after you. I was about to say, but we don't weep at I'm not Joe Rowling. I don't weep when my characters die. Not very often, anyway. So.
It's funny, maybe more inclined to weep at other people's dying. That's because you invest in a different way. Maybe one's maybe you invest as a reader differently to the way you invest as a writer, perhaps.
As a creator.
Yeah. Or
do you ever do
you don't
happy
have
cry?
the agency.
Happy cries. Oh, yes. Oh.
That can happen.
The end of the Sense and Sensibility movie,
Such a
I always
villain.
happy cry.
That can happen.
Well, I was
the
going
end of sorry, Alex. Kiki's Delivery Service. I always cry at the end of that when she
yes.
catches him and they're flying on the waves together. I'm even feeling little prickles of happy tears at the moment.
So that's a Miyazaki film, isn't it? Is it a Miyazaki film? Yeah.
It is.
They can get me. There's something about that melancholy that a lot of Japanese artists do very, very well. But I was going to say the other reason that I'm inclined to kill people, I'd love if that was just taken out of context because it's great. The other reason that I'm inclined to kill people is that I like competent villains and I like to feel like the stakes are high enough.
Yeah.
So from that kind of perspective, to set up for an audience that this person's actually competent, I've got to give them a win or two. I was reading about Ursula the Sea Witch the other day from The Little Mermaid, and they were saying I don't know what they're not sharks that work for her.
Oh, the eels.
The eels. The eels are like top of the list of competent Disney sidekicks.
Yeah.
Because usually Disney sidekicks are useless, but the eels actually do everything they're supposed to do. They bring the Little Mermaid to Ursula when the prince and the Little Mermaid are about to kiss in the boat. The eels get there and turn it over. Like, the eels are competent, and weirdly that makes the stakes. Poor Sean's just dying.
He's dying in the background. We're killing him.
Killing Sean. Don't kill Sean.
There's the episode title, Killing Sean.
Killing Sean.
Just the thought of the eels set me
are
up.
higher. The stakes are higher if the villain is someone you go, they have it in them to win.
Yeah.
Or if they're not going to win, they're going to take people we love with them. And I find that really compelling.
That's, I think, one of the reasons I killed the kid in the book was that people, because they're on a wagon train, right? And you have to realise the stakes are high.
Yes.
There's a cost to it. But also there's another, in another book, because I don't want to give away plot spoilers, in another book a character dies and it was a fake out. It was to distract you so I could pull off another twist.
Did you do a Chewbacca? Was it a Chewbacca moment?
If I hadn't had
sure
this
Amy
death,
did it better.
if I hadn't had this death in the book, the twist coming, people would have twigged to. But you get so caught up in this death that you don't notice. So I managed to trick people. It was like a double feint. And so that was a very technical way to coldly use someone's death.
Yeah, just throw someone on the altar of your twist. Yeah, absolutely. Right. But I do get annoyed. I think one of the reasons I really like that is because I get a bit frustrated if I'm watching something and I don't feel that those stakes are that high. The third book in the Millennium Trilogy, the first three that were written by the author who passed away, is it Stieg Larsson that wrote the first three, I think?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
And I think they're very, I really like them. But the third one didn't strike me as strong because, and I might have said this in the podcast before, but I felt like the villains just aren't going to pull this one off. I never felt at any point that anyone was in. I thought, these guys are so far behind you now. There's no real danger here. Whereas previously I thought, well, there's a big conspiracy going on. The stakes are much higher. The challenge is much greater. So they say there's that thing, particularly in serialized television, where the villains lose power because the longer the series goes, the more they lose, right? Like a cartoon, like Shredder in the Ninja Turtles cartoon, it stops being credible after about 10 episodes. So it's always like...
It's a cartoon, Alex. It's a cartoon.
I want him to kill someone, Sean.
Isn't it funny?
I want to remember that he's scary. Yeah.
As you're talking, I'm thinking about books that do that really well and do have a punch because they kill people. And I'm going to spoil things, but like Stephen King's Cujo is a book that I got to the end of, and I had a baby, so I was a little bit invested in this mother-child thing anyway. But I got to the end of that and I was devastated. Like I was crying and crying and crying because I couldn't believe he'd done it. I couldn't believe you get through, because you used to most horror novels having with Stephen King anyway, some kind of happy ending. Yeah. That someone will get out of it, because even in The Shining, things turn out okay for some people. But in that one, like, to follow through and actually have the deaths was intense. And the other one is, I know he's not everyone's favourite anymore, Orson Scott Card, because he's so homophobic. But he wrote a book called Lost, and other things. He wrote a book called Lost Boys. I don't know if anyone's read it. It's and it just reads like a really simple, realist book about this family. They're Mormons, of course, and they move to a town, and the father's busy, and he's just got a job, and it just reads like this boring. It's a bit like Joseph Heller's Something Happened. You just read, you're going along, and there's a pedophile who's killing kids, and there's like a crime where they're trying to solve it and everything. And then right at the end, the oldest son helps them catch the killer, and you realise the son's been dead all along. And the father was so caught up in his own life, he hadn't noticed that his son was a ghost. That they hadn't noticed the son go missing, and then the ghost turn up and lead them to the killer. They just, because you're not paying attention, you're just being a parent. And that one really got me, because I was so invested in the kid. But yeah, when you actually kill a character people really have identified with, I think that's the key, because we don't often do that. We often kill a minor character. But when you've so identified with a major character and you've pretended you were them and they die, that's pretty intense.
Well, you can do what the Lovely Bones did, is kill your character off on the opening chapter and then get to know them over the rest of the book, which that's a harrowing book.
I'm doing that now. That's the book I'm writing now. Is there's this woman with cancer, and it's about two sisters. And in the opening chapter, one of the sisters, she's dying, and then it cuts back and forth through time. And it's about their relationship. But having to write her dying right at the beginning I think that's one reason I'm going very slowly with it. It's killing me.
Yeah, you said I think last week that especially in this moment, it's extra hard, I think. What about feeling a sense of responsibility in terms of, because I'm quite a horror fan, thriller fan. I enjoy that stuff. But I reacted quite badly to Wolf Creek because it felt a little bit too real. I just went, well, shit like this has actually happened. Whereas I could watch The Shining or Nightmare on Elm Street and these ridiculous things that are never going to happen.
It takes the cartoonishness away, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah,
like
so what about
Saw?
a sense
I've got
of
no
that?
interest in Saw.
Or Hostel, or that kind of torture porn stuff. Yeah.
I've never watched the Jigsaw movies or Saw movies for that reason. I'm sort of curious, but movies like that or the Serbian film, just pass. I'm sort of curious about it, but I don't want to sit through it. It's too harrowing.
I had a friend who brought over the trilogy of The Human Centipede.
Oh.
And I had to psych myself up for it, and I went, oh, what the hell, I've had a few drinks. The first one, I'll say, is not as bad as you would perhaps imagine. It's got a couple of images in it. Once you get to the third one, I've never felt physically sick watching something.
See, that's just pornography. Like, it's
and
a
that
form
is,
of
it's
pornography.
a form of exploitation, certainly.
Yeah.
It's a form of... and I just don't go in for that kind of thing. But sometimes you can find yourself in an uncomfortable in-between space where you go, am I doing that? I've got to be careful. Am I doing that thing? When we were redrafting Witching Hour, the concept of Witching Hour, and if I write it up as a novel, I'll go back to this. It was always that male virgins were the victims. That because in horror the cliche is that it's always virginal females who are usually the victim or the final girl. That's the kind of thing. And when I'm going to turn it on its head, let's do it the other way. So the witches had to get the hearts of male virgins. That was their thing that they were doing. And then, of course, once you start dealing with funding bodies and script editors, they just start chipping away at you like, oh, can you kill one girl? Could you just kill one girl? And I went, oh, I don't really feel that comfortable. And can she be in the shower when you kill her? And I'm like, no. And
Can
so
she
I
be
didn't.
blonde?
And it's awful because I'm portraying those people as horrible people. They're actually not. They're actually just incredibly market driven, and they start to steer you that way. And I just went, no, I'm not doing that. And look, the film never happened, so there you go. But sometimes you find yourself in that uncomfortable space where you go, oh, I did not intend to go down this road, but now I'm in a situation where... Have you ever felt pressured in that way by anyone? Or?
I was working with a film producer from Canada once, me and my film and TV collaborator, Caroline Gross, and the producer said, they had bought the idea at this point. I mean, we were developing it, and he said, words to the effect that, we want really, really gruesome murders in this because that's what women want in television.
What women want.
I know. It ran counter to everything we'd ever heard or experienced, and we kind of looked at each other and shrugged and thought, okay, well, he's our producer. He's signing our checks for us. We'll just roll with it and see what happens. But he had this opinion that women, the women market for crime, science fiction crime, would only be appeased by a series of gruesome, bloody crimes. I don't know. Again, never got made. So maybe he was right. Maybe he was wrong.
That's want a blood sacrifice. That's what they want, Sean.
That's right.
Yeah, wow.
Can they have it in the shower?
It always goes back to that.
That's right. And he wanted women to be killed. So he had this theory that women love watching other women being killed. And I kind of wanted to say, you're a man saying that women, I think, skip the middleman and just say that you want to watch women being killed.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is why, the biggest market for female readers is romance.
Yeah, of course.
They
that's
love
right.
watching people being killed.
That's right. Is there anybody,
weird.
perhaps this
Very
could be
weird.
our final question maybe, is there anybody you've regretted killing in your stories?
I was going to ask that. That
I got him
doesn't,
first.
doesn't answer your question at all. But
Does that mean you have an answer prepared though, Alex?
I'm starting to wonder in this conversation whether I'm being too flippant about death in fiction. But I don't think I've ever. Well, the mythological creature I certainly have dwelt on, but none of the most of the people I've killed were horrible anyway. They deserved it.
Yeah, I think
That's
I've
all right.
mostly
Dexter.
killed cartoonish people in the westerns, or you can't get away from it in the Holocaust. I wish I could take back the Holocaust, but you kind of have to go there.
Yeah. That
Sure.
guy I killed in the love triangle in Twin Maker, I regretted killing because as I was writing the draft, he wasn't really... He was funny and he was witty and he was cool and he was charming, things that I am none of. So he came alive in
We
the
don't agree with
rewrites. Well, he came alive in the rewrites and I came to really like him. And he was only in the book for about 20% of the book and barely there at all. And the more I came to like him, the more I wished I hadn't had to kill him off. So when the opportunity came to bring him back in book 3, I thought I can bring this guy back and have
can
so
do
much
it.
more fun with him and ratchet the tension up for my main character as well, which is I think for me what a lot of death is about in fiction, is just to make things even worse for your main character, which is almost like torture porn, but people want the characters to bleed emotionally or physically or both on the page, and sometimes losing a loved one or...
We're pretty
or-
mean, aren't we?
Oh,
We're pretty
yeah.
mean gods.
Absolutely. And in Twin Maker, I mean, the Twin Maker series, it's about a machine that can create copies of people. And so the last book has multiple copies of the main character, and one of them dies as well. And that was hard to
Like
write.
Moon. That's like in Moon. Have you seen
Oh,
Moon?
yes, of course. Yes,
Oh.
yeah.
That's gutting.
Yeah.
What's that Will Ferrell movie? Is it where...
It's not the invention of lying. It's the other one. No, it's
that's Ricky Gervais.
Quick, call Nana
it's-
Joy.
Nana Joy,
Yeah.
I need your help. But where he realises he's in
No,
a
I
book
know.
and
He's fictional. Stranger than
he's
fiction.
fictional, stranger than fiction, and he realises he's going to be murdered.
Yeah.
It does make you stop and think. You know, in a parallel world, are we actually killing people?
Well, you are. You're writing all these stories that come true.
That's right. And if you're religious at all, there's a fair chance you believe that God is the author of our being and has written our demise already, which is a bit of a grim thought in this day and
wow.
age. Well, that's a cheerful thought to end on. Here I was thinking that talking
Kill
about
the
killing
vibe.
characters would be fun. I thought we'd be talking about Star Wars and stuff like that, but perhaps thankfully not. It would be not good to joke about death in the time of the plague. It's very serious stuff, and I'm pleased that we take it all so seriously.
Yeah, it's been fun.
So what are you going to do now to cheer up? We haven't updated each other up on our works, our mighty works lately. What Alex? What are you up to next? Have you finished the play? Is that all done?
I handed the draft of so I've got one play that called Watchlist that is being published in a couple of weeks, and I just handed up a draft of another one to a director that we're planning to do, and this is the one with Harlow, my favourite villain at the moment. And
of course, as people are listening to this, Watchlist will be out for sale right now. You can rush out and buy it.
Please buy Watchlist and say he was a horrible prophet. He was a twisted, cruel Nostradamus. So I've just handed a bunch of stuff in. So I think I'm going to drink and party on and read your book tomorrow.
Uh-oh.
And then I'll get back to doing my own thing.
And Amy, how's your study leave going?
Yeah, it's coming along. It's life in the time of coronavirus. It's doing okay. I'm finding it hard to write with a full house. I went a bit stir crazy yesterday because there's just nowhere in the place that's quiet ever. So I am just kind of slogging away at this book I'm writing, which is a bit too grim. But I'm also trying to develop a historical fiction about a real person, which I'll tell you more about later.
Excellent. I look forward to hearing about it. I'm just doing grant applications still.
Oh, fun.
What fun. Yay.
If only you could kill someone in a grant application.
Oh, I do have to write that, a really horrible horror story that I've been putting it off for weeks and weeks. It is
you've
so
alluded
horrible.
to that before.
Oh, it's too horrible. But anyway, thanks for listening. On that note, be well, be happy, be cheerful, be productive, stay safe.
Keep writing.
See you next time.
Why don't you write when you don't need money? All your notes sound alike too much. All of them start with I love you, honey, but they end with the same old touch. Just for a change, send a nice loving letter and cut out that please remit. Why don't you write when you don't need money, honey? That would certainly make a hit.
Alex just gave the thumbs up again. He
Again.
still hasn't learned.
Every time. He
hasn't
doesn't say
learned.
goodbye. He can't get the hang of radio.
When you have a good ending, I just think, oh, I'll leave it there.